Hello and welcome to NC Continental Prime, reaching you from our studio in Lagos, Nigeria. I am Benga Aborowa, and these are the top stories at this hour. Bandits kill one student, abduct 10 others in Kaduna, northwest Nigeria. Protesters take to the streets of Sudan, protesting against hike in fuel price. And South Africa expels Lesotho diplomats for allegedly selling illicit duty-free alcohol. We'll bring you all the details shortly. We begin in West Africa, where Nigerians will tomorrow, the 12th of June, be marking the new Democracy Day for the third time since it was made a law by current President Muhammadu Buhari. While Nigerians recognize the day and the man behind the day, Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola, major politicians worry about the state of underdevelopment in the country.
If the election had not been annulled because it was a Nigerian mandate, then the process of making Nigeria a united country would have been better experienced. Furthermore, if that election was not annulled, the process of turning Nigeria from being a country to a nation would have been possible. Up to today, since 1960 till now, Nigeria remains a country, not a nation. Because the fact that the military jackboots decided to have such total disregard and contempt for the popular will of the Nigerian people, who voted for Abiola to be their president, to govern them for a particular period of time, and then arrested him and killed him.
Now, joining me on NC Continental Prime this evening to discuss the relevance of the day is the Executive Director, Center for Public Accountability, Mr. Femi Lawson. A very good evening to you, Mr. Femi Lawson.
Good evening. Good evening.
Now, tomorrow, Nigerians will be celebrating Democracy Day. It's the 22nd year of an uninterrupted democratic experience. How would you say Nigeria has fared in the last 22 years? What's your assessment?
Well, it's been 22 years of democracy, which a lot of us have had to refer to as 22 years of civil rule in Nigeria, especially when you have to consider, the principles upon which democracy all over the world, is built upon. Nigeria, even after 22 years of returning to civilian rule, has not been able to entrench the tenet of democracy as expected, not only by those who fought for democracy, from the period of June 12 to 1999, but also by Nigerians who had hoped that from 1999, their lot would have been better. There have been, a lot of more transformation that would have really, entrenched democratic, rule in the country. Unfortunately, we've had successive civilian administration in Nigeria, but the tenet of democracy has not been as entrenched as we have hoped, as a people, as Nigerians.
Now, Femi, you just painted a picture that it's not, if you're meant to grade it, you won't give it a pass mark. What would you say is responsible for some of these challenges? And some have said that, in the early days, you say because of the hangover of the military rule, but this is 22 years. Why would you say, why is it that a lot of Nigerians, if you ask them, have not really reaped the dividends and the fruits of democracy?
Well, let me state this, that even though it's 22 years, and one would have expected that, even a baby born in 1999, would have become an adult, a full adult by now, 22 years after being born. But the truth is that the operatives of our democracy have not been able to really practice democracy as it should be practiced. Today, we have a country that still criminalizes, peaceful protest. We have a country where you can, just wake up and lock up the courts for over 2 months. We have a country where, the rights of citizens. And when you talk about democracy, you talk about rule of law. You talk about human rights. You talk about, equality. These are, some fundamental principles that have been found wanting under our own democracy. And that is why a lot of us still continually refer to what we have as civil rule. We had expected that successive administration, after that of President Obasanjo, who was the first president of this republic, to late President Yar'Adua, to Goodluck Jonathan, and now President Buhari, would have been able to consolidate, on what we got in 1999 and promote the culture of democracy. And one thing is responsible for this. What has given the successive administration the kind of power that has been used to trample upon, these principles of democracy is the constitution currently being operated by this country. Until we do away with that military, imposed constitution, we may not come to the full actualization of our aspiration for a democratic and a truly democratic Nigeria.
Now, Femi Lawson, I'm glad you raised the point of the 1999 Constitution, which a lot of people have said that it's one of the fault lines of why our democratic experience has not been able to yield many fruits. There's currently a constitutional amendment type of exercise, town hall, in 6 geopolitical zones of the country. Do you think anything major can come out of this and, perhaps adjust the 1999 Constitution to work in the interest of the generality of the population?
I am not under any illusion, just like so many Nigerians, that the ongoing constitutional amendment will give birth to any positive result. The truth is that what this country requires today is a new constitution that will reflect the wishes and aspirations of Nigerians. We cannot continue, to amend the constitution given by less than 20 people in the Supreme Military Council as a dead and continue to rigmarole around it, calling it amendment. Remember that this is not the first time that the 1999 Constitution is being amended. The 1999 Constitution has been amended on a number of occasions, yet it has not been able to give Nigeria and Nigerians the kind of constitution they deserve and they desire. And that is why I don't see any positive thing coming out of the ongoing constitutional amendment. The National Assembly should be bold enough, be the representative of the people, and possibly expand representation through adoption of previous recommendation of national conferences and come out with a constitution that would reflect the aspiration of the Nigerian people. In 2014, there was a national conference and there was a proposed constitution that would have addressed some of the fundamental defects that are in the 1999 constitution. But we are running away from that. We keep editing and adding and subtracting from the military imposed constitution. And I want to say that no amount of amendment can really make that constitution to reflect the aspiration of the Nigerian people.
Now, a lot of Nigerians have vowed to protest in different parts of the country tomorrow. The Lagos State Commissioner of Police this evening said Akim Odumosu did say that he wasn't aware of any group protest and people should go about their business. But there's an atmosphere of fear in the country. A lot of people are telling their loved ones that please don't go out. The security operators will be high-handed. Would you say this is justified?
It is not only unjustifiable, it is anti-democratic. It is one of the problems that have been confronting our democracy that has limited it to a civil rule since 1999. Number one, the police commissioner needs to be told that under no law are citizens required to take permit from the police before they can have procession, protest, or call it any gathering. The courts have ruled on this severally, but our law enforcement institutions, particularly the police, that should have been in charge of enforcing our laws, protecting the dignity of our laws, are always the first violators of our laws. And that is what the police commissioner in Lagos is attempting to do. There is no law that says citizens must notify the police before protest. Number two is the attempt by this regime, to criminalize protest. Unfortunately, this regime came on board as a result of a series of protests and agitations against the previous administration. But today, protests are being criminalized because citizens want to merely, in a peaceful manner, express their reservation about how the country is governed. We cannot continue to silence our citizens. It does not, reflect that we are in a democratic society. And that is one of the things I've said that has limited the capacity of this democracy to actually, grow up enough to look like what we have done for 22 years. There is no law against citizens protesting. The right to assembly, the right to expression is constitutionally guaranteed, and no police or authority should be violating these provisions of the Constitution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Femi Lawson, for joining us on NC Continental Prime. We do appreciate your insights on the subject, and have a happy Democracy Day.
It's a pleasure.
Now, in Lagos State, southwest of Nigeria, the Commissioner of Police, Hakeem Odumosu, says he's not aware of any planned protest to commemorate the 2021 Democracy Day on Saturday, the 12th of June. Odumosu therefore appealed to members of the public to disregard any sit-at-home order and called by certain groups, which has been circulated in the social media space, and to go about their lawful business, as the police and other security agencies have made necessary arrangements to maintain law and order across the state. Meanwhile, the Commissioner of Police said a special squad has been formed to go after traffic robbers who have been terrorizing innocent Lagosians and get the state rid of such miscreants.
Well, the command is not aware of any planned protest to commemorate the 2021 Democracy Day tomorrow, 12th of June 2021. We are not aware of such, and we want to urge the members of the general public to disregard any sit-at-home order that might come from any quarters. There's nothing like that. Those such should be disregarded, and they should go about their normal lawful businesses tomorrow, as we don't anticipate any breakdown of law and order tomorrow, as all hands are on deck to make sure that we maintain law and order in Lagos State tomorrow. So we are not aware of any planned protest in the state, and there is no sit-at-home order anywhere. And those ones that are being circulated in the social media should be disregarded, as the command and other security agencies are ready to make sure we maintain law and order in Lagos State tomorrow and even beyond. So we are not aware of any planned protest tomorrow in Lagos State.
The Lagos State Public Relations Police Officer Olumuyiwa Adejobi. One student has been confirmed dead and several others kidnapped as armed bandits attacked Nuhu Bamali Polytechnic in Zaria on Thursday night in Kaduna State, northwest of Nigeria. The Kaduna State government said the bandits invaded the staff quarters of the campus, shooting sporadically. 2 students were hit and sustained gunshot injuries. The government said 2 lecturers and about 8 students were abducted from the institution during the attack.
Here, 2 lecturers and about 8 students have been kidnapped, and 1 student is confirmed dead, and 1 is presently on admission receiving medical attention. So we've had the plight of the student, and I want to assure them that we will do all that is within our reach in order to enhance security asset here in the institution. And I also want the student to know that there is indeed deployment of troops across or along the Kaduna-Zaria road. They are carrying out aggressive fighting patrol, and we are of the strong conviction that The bandit came to the institution because they were denied freedom of action on the Kaduna Zaria road. Possibly that is why they exploited the window that we saw here. But I want to assure you that we will do our best. Like you can see, we are here with heads of security agencies who are operating in the general area. We are grateful to you. We are grateful for your civility. We are grateful for your understanding. And I want to assure you that we don't take it for granted.
Malians are now reacting to the announcement by French President Emmanuel Macron on the future reduction of French military presence fighting Islamic extremism in the African Sahel region. France's Operation Berkane will formally end and will be replaced by another mission focused on fighting Islamic extremists that relies more on regional partners. French troops have been present in Mali since 2013, when they intervened to force Islamic extremist rebels from power in towns across the country's north. France currently has about 5,100 soldiers deployed across the semi-arid strip on the southern edge of the Sahara Desert as part of its Operation Berkane, whose headquarters are in the Chadian capital, N'Djamena. The Ivorian government have set up what it calls an International Academy for Combating Terrorism. The aim of this establishment is to train cadres and special forces from the African continent in a move to reinforce the resistance efforts against jihadist extremism in the region. The academy launched in line with France's President Emmanuel Macron's announcement of a profound transformation of France's anti-jihadist military operations in the African Sahel. Now, a massive drive to plant 5 million trees in Ghana began today as part of a nationwide campaign to save depleting forest reserves. Under the Green Ghana program, the government provided free seedlings to persons from all walks of life, including celebrities, officials, parliamentarians, traditional leaders, and school children. Religious and charitable organizations and heads of numerous ethnic groups also took part in Friday's effort, while President Nana Akufo-Addo planted a memorial tree in the garden of Jubilee House, the government seat in the capital, Accra. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, Ghana is one of the tropical countries with the highest percentage of rainforest loss in the world. And from the western part of the continent, we move to East Africa, where UNICEF, the World Food Programme, and the World Health Organization have expressed concern about the situation in Tigray region, where the risk of famine is imminent unless food, livelihood assistance, and other life-saving intervention continue to be scaled, unimpeded access is guaranteed, and hostilities cease. The United Nations aid agencies are urgently calling for unfettered access to the population in Tigray that is suffering from a dramatic, acute food insecurity in northern Ethiopia, with the World Health Organization describing it as a public health emergency. According to the latest Integrated Food Security Phase Classification analysis, over 350,000 people are already facing catastrophic conditions in Tigray.
We find ourselves in an absolute crisis in Tigray with the situation there, and catastrophic food security situation for which people have already begun to die. This is a crisis of certainly food security, but it's really a crisis of access protection issues that's preventing us from doing the work that's required. It's an incredibly dangerous environment for us to all be working in. There have been 9 humanitarians who've been killed thus far. Every day we have our teams, and this is WFP, NGOs, partners, everybody who's trying to operate in the north, find themselves challenged at checkpoints. They're increasingly hostile in some of these checkpoints. We have our beneficiaries having the things that are given to them looted from them.
We are seeing more and more young children and babies slide dangerously close to sickness and potential death from malnutrition. UNICEF's working with our partners to provide nutrition, healthcare, clean water support. However, without humanitarian access to scale up our response, an estimated 30,000 plus severely malnourished children in those highly inaccessible areas are at high risk of death. Let's not play with terminology at this point. People are dying. These people are coping with famine-like conditions. These people are beginning to starve. We've rung alarm bells and alarm bells, and here we are now. We now have, the largest number of people classified as food insecure in a decade since Somalia. And as I say, that very real risks the deaths of tens of thousands of children.
The key message is access, access, access. We have teams at the ready. We have mobile clinics that have run in conjunction with the partners that could provide nutrition, healthcare, all the services. Only 40 have been able to be operational, 2/3 of what we've got. Our teams are being turned away by warring parties. The situation is a public health crisis. Severe acute malnutrition, as has been very clearly documented, is a public health emergency. Malnourished children are more likely to contract any of the infectious diseases and die of it, such as pneumonia, diarrhea, malaria, and measles.
Ethiopia's electoral board has postponed elections in 2 of the country's federal states, Somali and Harare, until September. The voting, which is due in 10 days, will also not take place in Tigray, where there's currently a conflict. The authorities say irregularities and problems with the printing of ballot papers are reasons for the delay. No date has been set for elections in Tigray yet. The poll was initially scheduled to be held in August last year, but was postponed because of the coronavirus pandemic. It was set for June the 5th, but again pushed forward by just over 2 weeks. We now move to North Africa, where Sudanese have taken to the streets to protest the government's decision to remove subsidies on petrol and diesel, resulting in respective prices more than doubling. The demonstrations were in response to a call the day before by an influential trade union group that had spearheaded mass protests leading to the ouster of former President Omar al-Bashir. Finance Minister Gibril Ibrahim said scrapping subsidies on petrol and diesel was part of policies aimed at serving the interests of the Sudanese people and the Sudanese economy. Since April, Sudan has seen inflation soar by over 360%. Still in the region, more than 200 migrants bound for Europe have been intercepted by Libya's Coast Guard just off the shore of the North African country. Spokeswoman for the International Organization for Migration, IOM, Safa Mseli, tweeted that the migrants were expected to be sent to Libyan detention centers where they are usually extorted and abused. So far this year, 11,000 migrants have been detained by Libyan authorities under appalling conditions. Libya has become the major transit point for African and Arab migrants hoping to reach Europe after the North African country plunged into a bloody civil war following a NATO-backed uprising that toppled and killed longtime ruler Colonel Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. Now, in Southern Africa, Zimbabwe's government has appealed to the European Union to remove sanctions, which it says have continued to hinder development and caused the economic meltdown in the country. During the EU-Zimbabwe political dialogue held in the capital, Harare, the Foreign Affairs Minister, Frederick Shava, said that there was a need for the European Union to remove the sanctions to enable bilateral relations and trade between Harare and EU member countries to continue unhindered. Shava said the country was more than willing to ensure that it was back in the good books with the EU and looked forward to more engagements. EU Ambassador to Zimbabwe, Timo Okenen, said the dialogue had presented both parties with an opportunity to engage on all issues. He said the EU was equally aware of the human rights situation in Zimbabwe. Okenen emphasized that the EU was thoroughly committed to helping the country with bilateral trade relations and dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Coming up on NC Continental Prime, South Africa expels LESOTHO diplomats for allegedly selling off duty-free alcohol. We'll bring you details of this story and more after the break. You're welcome back. Lesotho says several of its diplomats have been expelled from South Africa over what it says was an illicit sale of a duty-free alcohol. The Foreign Affairs Ministry in Maseru said South Africa had given the diplomats and their families 72 hours to leave the country. South African media are reporting that cash-strapped Lesotho diplomats have been bringing alcohol into the country without paying duty and reselling it in bars and restaurants. The ministry expressed disappointment and embarrassment that several Lesotho diplomats have now been declared persona non grata by the South African government. Zimbabwe is reporting 4 more COVID-19 related deaths and 64 new cases in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number of cases to over 39,000. So far, the total number of COVID-19 related deaths in Zimbabwe now stands at 1,626, while national recovery rate stands at 94%. The vaccination program is continuing countrywide, with over 1 million persons having been vaccinated against COVID-19 as of Thursday. Now, South Africa has technically entered the third wave of the coronavirus pandemic. The country's National Institute for Communicable Diseases said the national 7-day moving average incidence, which reached 5,959 cases, exceeded the new wave threshold defined by the Ministerial Advisory Committee of the government. A threshold was defined as 30% of the peak incidence of the previous wave. The institute also reported 9,149 new COVID-19 cases, bringing the national tally to over 1.7 million, while the death toll stood at 57,410. The majority of the new cases were from the Gauteng province, which hosts the nation's economic hub, Johannesburg, and the administrative capital, Pretoria, accounting for over 61% of the infections. And in North Africa, Algeria has announced its launching of mobile clinics to provide coronavirus vaccine shots to accelerate the rollout to inoculate its population. Algeria has administered at least 2.5 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines so far. Algeria has also recorded more than 3,000 deaths since the beginning of the pandemic. Maldives is reporting less than 295 new COVID-19 cases as of today, Friday. The cases were confirmed from over 4,000 samples tested, and 138 of the 295 cases are from the Greater Malay region, while 146 are from residential islands and 11 from resorts. This pushes the country's COVID-19 tally to 69,831. While the government began easing COVID-19 restrictions last year following a decline in cases, there was recently a spike later confirmed as the fourth wave, forcing authorities to strengthen COVID-19 restrictions, especially in the capital, Male. Since the measures were strengthened in mid-May, reported daily cases have been decreasing gradually. Rwanda has announced the suspension of its flights to and from Uganda's Entebbe International Airport due to a surge in COVID-19 cases in Uganda. The suspension will be in place until further notice. Uganda is suffering another upsurge in COVID-19 infections, with a 7-day average of daily new cases climbing from around 100 in late May to near 1,000 in the week starting June 6th. The national tally of cases rose by 1,438 to 56,949 on Thursday. The country remains in partial lockdown as social gatherings and inter-district travel remains prohibited. In Southern Africa, Namibia has recorded 1,045 COVID-19 cases. The highest daily increase since coronavirus was reported in March last year. Health Minister Kalumbi Shangula, in a statement, said the cases are from all the country's 14 regions, with 59% of them recorded in the capital, Windhoek. He noted that the current situation demands urgent action, adding that the COVID-19 monitoring team is reviewing the situation with a response to mount an appropriate response. The minister also announced 18 COVID-19 related deaths, bringing the total to 968. Namibia has so far reported over 61,000 confirmed COVID-19 positive cases and over 53,000 recoveries and 968 deaths. Tunisia's health ministry has reported 2,373 new COVID-19 cases, raising the total number of infections in the country to over 362,000. The death toll from the virus rose by 76 to 13,305 in Tunisia, while the total recovery reached over 317,000. A total of 1.54 million lab tests have been carried out in Tunisia so far, with over 1.2 million people having received the COVID-19 vaccine, and over 352,000 of them having received both doses. You're watching NC Continental Prime. Still ahead, United Nations High Commissioner warns of further bloodshed in Myanmar as the military crackdown increases. We'll bring you details of the story and more after the break. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, today issued a strong warning of imminent further bloodshed and suffering in Myanmar. The spokesperson for the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Ravina Shamdasani, says violence has been on the rise with reports of a military build-up, notably in Kaya State. Shamdasani noted that more than 108,000 people have fled their homes over the last 3 weeks as the situation worsens.
The High Commissioner warns that a further escalation in violence is unfolding across Myanmar, and it must be halted to prevent an even greater loss of life and a deepening humanitarian emergency. Reports indicate that a military buildup, particularly in Kaya State in the east and Chin State in the west of the country. As we had feared, the armed conflict and other violence are intensifying in many parts of Myanmar, including Kaya State, Chin State, and Kachin State, with the violence particularly intense in areas with significant numbers of ethnic and religious minority groups. State security forces have continued to use heavy weaponry, including airstrikes, against armed groups and against civilians and civilian objects, including Christian churches. There appear to be no efforts towards de-escalation, but rather a buildup of troops in key areas, contrary to the commitments that the military made to ASEAN to cease the violence. Credible reports indicate that security forces have used civilians as human shields, shelled civilian homes and churches in Loikau, Fekon, and Demoso in Kaya State, and they have blocked humanitarian access, including by attacking humanitarian actors. Already, more than 108,000 people have fled their homes just in Kaya State over just the last 3 weeks. Many have fled into forest areas with little or no food, water, sanitation, or medical care. These are people who are in urgent need of humanitarian assistance. Credible reports also indicate that a minimum of 860 people have been killed by security forces since the 1st of February, and this is mostly just in the context of protests. Rather than seeking dialogue, the military is branding its opponents as terrorists and pursuing politically motivated charges against the democratic leadership. In just over 4 months, Myanmar has gone from being a fragile democracy to a human rights catastrophe. In addition to the loss of life, people are suffering from severe impacts on their social and economic rights. The military leadership is singularly responsible for this crisis and must be held to account.
Now, in business, the governments of South Sudan and Malawi have signed a memorandum of understanding aimed at boosting agriculture and inter-border trade between the two countries. This comes after representatives from the two countries met in the South Sudanese capital, Juba, on Thursday to strike a deal which also seeks to strengthen bilateral ties between the two countries. The MOU also seeks to break the national frontiers to create unrestricted access to opportunities for women and youths in the two countries. South Sudan's Minister of Trade and Commerce, Mkul Athian, who signed the deal on behalf of the government of South Sudan, said the MOU came at a critical time. The MOU provides that the Ministry of Trade from the two countries empowers business people by creating a safe and enabling environment for trade. For the rest of the business news, we turn to Tolulope Adeleru Balogun.
Welcome to Business on NC Continental Prime. I'm Tolulope Adeleru Balogun. We start in the southern part of the continent, where South Africa's Ministry of Public Enterprises has announced the preferred strategic equity partner for South African Airways, SAA, is Takatso Consortium. The consortium will undertake a due diligence exercise before the transaction is finalized. According to a statement, this partnership between government and the private sector is a demonstration of South Africa's ability to develop an entirely homegrown solution to successfully relaunch SAA as a sustainable, competitive, and transformed airline. The Public Enterprises Minister, Pravin Gordhan, says the selection of the consortium is a groundbreaking decision for the government, noting that they looked long and hard at the proposals submitted, and the clear choice of a preferred partner was the Takatso Consortium. And staying in South Africa, the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry has said that Eskom is dampening a buoyant business mood, as business leaders had expressed their highest level of confidence in trading conditions in 3 years. This came hours after Eskom implemented Stage 4 load shedding. The chamber warned that the blackouts could affect business sentiment that has been improving the business climate, while rising exports have boosted its confidence index. Investec's chief economist Annabelle Bishop said industries trying to localize production were likely to suffer from the insufficient supply of electricity to meet demand. The electricity, gas, and water sector had already shown signs of struggling to cope with power cuts in the first quarter, contracting by an annualized 2.6% during the period. And from the south to the east now, Kenya is adding another digital platform to ease doing business in the country. The Kenyan Treasury intends to introduce an electronic over-the-counter trading platform for bonds. This should increase the exposure securities to investors and improve pricing transparency. Now, Treasury Secretary Ukur Yatani says the government is working with the banking lobby, the Kenya Bankers Association, and capital market players to roll out the platform within a year. The digital over-the-counter platform is expected to increase trading of Treasury bonds and bills, boost secondary market trading, as well as deepen the capital markets. This new platform comes on the heels of a similar one for trading of unlisted shares by Nairobi Securities Exchange. The ECOWAS Parliament is moving closer towards achieving a single currency for the sub-region after it adopted the draft resolution on the Macroeconomic Convergence and Stability Pact. The pact, adopted at the closing of its first ordinary session in Abuja, is a critical prelude to achieving the criteria for member states' adoption of the single currency, the ECO. The Parliament adopted its resolution for a draft supplementary act on the pact. This followed deliberation at plenary on the submissions by its Joint Committee on Macroeconomic Policy and Economic Research, as well as the Committee on Administration, Finance, and Budget. And finally, the Food and Agriculture Organization has listed Nigeria among the top 10 wheat importers in the world. This is based on the Food Outlook biannual report on global food markets by the FAO. According to the reports, between 2018 and 2019 and 2020 and 2021, Nigeria imported about 5.2 million tons. It is projected that the import rates will increase to 5.5 million tons by 2021-2022, with an increased rate of 5.1% based on a common July-June marketing season. The FAO warned that there would be an increase in the cost of food imports by the end of 2021, which it said would likely affect the world's poorest countries. Based on the FAO report, the world's food import bill is projected to reach $1.72 trillion this year, up 12% from $1.53 trillion in 2020. And that's all the business we have for you right here on NC Continental Prime. My name is Tolulakwe Adile Balogun. There's more news right after this.
On NC Trends tonight, Show Bankole analyzes some of the trending stories online as a South African pastor is accused of duping women and also asking for sexual favors. Sorry for the technical glitch there. Now, in sports tonight, Stefanos Tsitsipas becomes the first Greek player to reach a Grand Slam final. New Central's Udoka Njoku is on standby to serve us the latest from the Roland Garros.
Kicking off with the world of sports, Mamelodi Sundowns have opted against extending the stay of veteran midfielder Tiana Mabunda. Now, Mabunda had been on the books of Sundowns for 7 years following his arrival from Black Leopards in 2014. He was considered one of the senior players in the Sundowns team, but his departure doesn't come as a major surprise because he was definitely not in the plans of the new technical team last season. The 33-year-old was previously linked with a possible move to the Swallows FC, and it remains to be seen if that door is still open now that he has left the Sundowns. Moving over to Liverpool and Egypt star now Mohamed Salah, he has officially clinched the Professional Football Association's Fans Player of the Year award following his great season on individual level, which saw him finish as Liverpool's top scorer for the fourth consecutive season. Liverpool had an underwhelming season, but Salah experienced a great campaign in terms of personal records and the numbers, as with 22 goals, the Egyptian helped the Reds earn Champions League qualification. Overall, Salah found the back of the net 31 times in 51 appearances during the season, coming second in the Premier League Golden Boot race, just one behind Harry Kane. And the French Open, Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova will take on Barbara Krejcikova in the French Open final, and the new Grand Slam singles champion will be crowned on Saturday. Barbara Krejcikova had never been past the fourth round in singles at Roland Garros before. Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova has reached the decider in her 52nd Grand Slam main draw, but had never previously made it beyond the quarterfinals. And moving over to the male side now, Stefanos Tsitsipas became the first Greek player to reach a Grand Slam final after holding off Alexander Zverev his fight back from 2 sets down in the 10-set French Open semifinals. Now, after losing all 3 of his previous Grand Slam semifinals, Tsitsipas rediscovered his level in the decider, halting Zverev, but missed out his 4 match points before 7 out. Now, Tsitsipas won in 3 hours and 37 minutes. Now, the 22-year-old will face either of Novak Djokovic or Rafael Nadal in Sunday's final. And that's it on sports updates. I hand over to Benga for the rest of the news.
He is standing by for updates in the world of entertainment.
Thank you very much. Now to entertainment news. Now, in the Gold Coast, Ghanaian award-winning musician Kwame Eugene is currently being sued for 120,000 Ghana cedis over allegations of song theft. Just a few days ago, a Ghana-based Nigerian artist, Uduma Esan, filed a copyright lawsuit against Kwame Eugene for allegedly plagiarizing his song. Reports say the singer is claiming part ownership of Kwame Eugene's hit song Showbody, where he featured Files sometime last year in October. Uduma Esan released his song with the same title, Showbody, in July 2020, months before Kwame. Now, according to Uduma himself, the title of the song is not the only similarity. In fact, there are some technical similarities between the 2 songs, he said. The CEO of Lynx Entertainment, Kwame's management, went ahead to blame the Ghanaian media for this. Here's what he said. Moving to Nigeria, 21-year-old music star Rema has gained wide acceptance since he signed to Maven Records in 2019. That same year, he bagged the highly coveted Next Rated award at the Headies. Now, fast forward to this year, Rema is currently touring US and performing at selected locations. Today, he's added a new song to his catalog, a brand new track he's titled Soundgasm. Just less than 12 hours ago, the young star broke the news on social media with the caption, "Today, I gift the universe with an Afro rave." Grammy Awards happened in March, and Nigeria's African giant Burna Boy bagged the Best Global Music Album prize. The star has finally received the gold-plated award in hand. Becoming the first Nigerian to win the coveted award for an independent body of work, the Grammy winner took to social media to post pictures holding the gold-plated gramophone. Due to the global pandemic that has affected the entire world, it was near impossible to have all the winners present to receive their awards that night. He's not the only one. Nigerian Afro House musician Nini Olakpata also posted her certificates of recognition from the Recording Academy for her contribution of Beyonce's Black is King film and the Gift album, a feat many didn't know she contributed to. Well, that's all entertainment news. I am Sam Dandy.
And finally, on the news, let's take a look at what to expect in terms of the weather on the continent tomorrow. And that's all on the news at this hour. But before we go, a reminder of our top stories. Bandits kill 1 student, abduct 10 others in Kaduna State, northwest of Nigeria. Protesters take to the streets of Sudan, protesting against hike in fuel price. And finally, we told you that South Africa expels Lesotho diplomats for allegedly selling illicit duty-free alcohol. Remember to follow us on social media with News Central TV. You can download our mobile app on App Store and Play Store. You can also watch the news live on Star Times Channel 274 and AVO TV Channel 23 and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Benga Aburua.